good, right? Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. This regular meeting of the Township Council is being held in accordance with the scheduled meetings of the Township Council established and adopted by the Township Council, which schedule designates the time, date, and place of this meeting. Adequate public notice of this meeting has been provided pursuant to the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act. We are using an electronic amplifying recording device in order to obtain a clear and audible record, and we request all those wishing to speak be recognized and state your name and address directly into the microphone. The recording device will be still utilized by the Township Clerk's Office for the preparation of minutes and shall be the official record of the Township Council meetings. Madam Clerk, may I have the roll call, please?
Mr. Hutchinson.
Present.
Ms. Grace. Here. Mr. Mayo.
Here.
Mrs. Stubbs.
She's ill, I'm sorry.
Mrs. Leonard. Here. Mrs. Schroeder. Here. Mr. Mercado.
Present.
Mr. Bernier.
Present.
Mr. Curtis.
Here.
Mr. Lechner.
Here.
Mr. Parkins.
Here.
Mr. Chadwell.
Here. We'll now open up our public portion. This public portion is for agenda items only. Anyone addressing council may speak at one time. The public portion is for 3 minutes for each speaker, with a maximum of 15 for the public portion, or first public portion. Once all those wishing to address council have had their turns, they may address council a second time. Open up the public portion. Mr. Polidoro.
Good evening, Council. Ray Polidor from the Historic Village of Ariel.
Good evening.
On the agenda, the budget, the current budget you have is a regular agenda item. Is that an error? Instead of a second reading?
No, it's a resolution.
Is there still a second reading that will be in the future?
No.
Normally, when we come up and ask about that during the first public reading, you ask us to wait until the second reading where we can speak on that. Now it appears as a regular agenda item rather than a second reading on a budget.
I don't believe so. Is that correct, Ms. Taylor?
There's a first reading and a second reading of the ordinance with the both resolutions. First one is referred to as a public hearing. The first one is introduction.
With that, I ask that you enjoy the time limit so much. If you would be so kind, not to affect the 5-minute time limit to which people speak, but the overall time limit, both on the first and second public portion, in that if you do the math with the amount of time you allow in the 3 minutes during the first public portion, 5 minutes during the second, it's only a set number of people that will be able to speak on that. So I ask that you consider waiving the overall time limit for the greater good of transparency, good government, and communications with the residents and taxpayers of the township, that you consider maybe extending those 2 periods of time on both public portions.
Mr. Polidoro, the first public portion will remain at 15 minutes. The second public portion will remain at 30 minutes. The resolution for the budget, we will have a public hearing for that, and that will be unlimited. I don't have a problem with that. But as you well are aware, we do have people that abuse the time of the public portion. Do you agree with me?
I would say abuse. I think sometimes it goes on a little long, but the dialogue back and forth, because there are times when within the time period you're allowing the public to speak, you guys are having a dialogue, and sometimes it goes long. Sometimes both sides can be long-winded, but I would agree, yes.
As I've stated in the past, I think that people should be cognizant of the time of their neighbors that want to speak as well. And in the past, you've instructed me to use the gavel, and that's why I have the gavel. So we will be adhering to the time limits today.
With the exception
Lord,
of,
with the public hearing for the budget, I ask that people be cognizant of their time. There are other people that would like to speak, okay?
okay, and also consider the dialogue going back and forth, which in most
So the
instances
clock will run.
but it's also healthy.
Thank you very much.
Mr. President, you do have the ability, since this is a hearing on the budget, to hold that separate from the general.
Oh, that's what we're doing, away from the regular agenda. Is there anyone else? Mr. Krug.
Evening, Council. Paul Krug, Blackwood Estates.
Evening, again, Paul.
Just looking at Resolution 2105-134 with regard to the change order for the bicycle path and the pedestrian bridge. Capella Construction had put in a bid, I think, around $193,000, which this change order now increases to $220,000. I was hoping to get additional details on the change order and why the price is going up by about $25,000.
Mr. Chadwell is our township engineer. Could you speak on that?
Yeah, so Capella Construction of the township engineer and public works met a few weeks ago. And public works, instead of hiring a crane to take down some of the trees, included some of these costs in this change order for, I think, 5 trees, ranging from 3 feet to exceeding 5 feet.
So the change order came from Gloucester Township Public Works.
It came from a decision, and it fit within the budget. Insurance settlement was far exceeding this amount, so there was some wiggle room in the budget, and Public Works decided to, again, instead of hiring a crane, hiring the contractor that was already on.
Okay, appreciate the explanation. Thank you. And just so I understood, not talking about budget right now, we're going to have another portion.
There will be a separate hearing for it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Seeing none, we'll go to the first public portion. Proclamation.
Whereas there were 585 motor vehicle fatalities in New Jersey in 2020. And whereas a large percentage of the motor vehicle occupants killed in traffic crashes were not wearing a seatbelt. And whereas use of the seatbelt remains the most effective way to avoid death or serious injury in a motor vehicle crash. And whereas the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration estimates that 135,000 lives were saved by safety belt usage nationally between 1975 and 2000. And whereas the state of New Jersey will participate in a nationwide click it or ticket seatbelt mobilization from May 24th to June 6th, 2021, in an effort to raise awareness and increase seatbelt usage through a combination of high visibility enforcement and public education. And whereas the Division of Highway Traffic Safety has set a goal of increasing the seatbelt usage rate in the state from the current level of 94.5% to 95.5%. And whereas a further increase in seatbelt usage in New Jersey will save lives on the roads. Now therefore be it resolved that David R. Mayor of the Township of Gloucester, and Orlando Mercado, President of Council of the Township of Gloucester, declare our support for the click it or ticket seatbelt mobilization both locally and nationally from May 24th, 2021 to June 6th, 2021, and pledge to increase awareness of the mobilization and the benefits of seatbelt usage.
Thank you, Mrs. Power. Next, we have an ordinance. It's the first reading. There will not be a public hearing for it. That'll be at our second reading. Ordinance 0-21-06, ordinance of the Township of Gloucester, County of Camden, and the State of New Jersey, amending ordinance 0-03-03, land development regarding plug-in electric vehicle charging stations. This is adding the following subsection to the zoning district regulations titled 427 plug-in electric vehicle charging station. So what it does is it's rather lengthy, but what it does is it defines the purpose and intent of this section, that charging stations can be permitted as accessory uses in all zoning districts. It defines the approving authority, battery exchange stations, charging levels, what an electric vehicle is, the charging stations in residential uses, and performance and design standards. Mr. Leckner, is there anything you want to add to that?
I'll just add, this ordinance and the next ordinance, 2107, were reviewed with the mayor's energy committee, along with New Jersey Sustainable New Jersey, in order for the township's gold certification. So it's been a work in progress.
Thank you, Mr. Leckner. I entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. On the question, Roll call, please.
Mr. Hodgson?
Yes.
Ms. Grace? Yes. Mr. Minio?
Yes.
Mrs. Winter? Yes. Mrs. Strato? Yes. Mr. McCarty?
Yes. Next is ordinance 0-21-07. This is a first reading. There will be a public hearing at the second reading. Ordinance of the Township of Gloucester, County of Camden, and State of New Jersey, amending ordinance 0-03-03, land development regarding solar energy. This adds the following subsection, Title 428, Solar Energy. It defines the purpose and intent of solar energy within our township at residents, commercial, industrial, office, institutional entities. Defines the approving authority, the building of integrated solar systems, performance, the permitted use, and development review process for solar energy systems in a residential or commercial area. I entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion.
A second.
On the question, roll call, please.
Mr. Hodgson?
Yes.
Ms. Grace? Yes. Mr. Minio?
Yes.
Mrs. Winter? Yes. Mrs. Strato? Yes. Mr. McCarty?
Yes. Next, we have a resolutions of consent agenda, 125 to 134. If there's any individual would like to have them removed, please speak up. I entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
A second.
Thank you. On the question, roll call, please.
Mr. Hodgson?
Yes.
Ms. Grace? Yes. Mr. Minio?
Yes.
Mrs. Winter? Yes. Mrs. Strato? Yes. Mr. McCarty?
Yes. Next, we have a regular agenda, Resolution 2105-135. Resolution of the Township Council of the Township of Gloucester, authorizing the Township Clerk to read the 2021 Township Budget by title only. I entertain the motion. At the public hearing.
Well, this is for the reading,
The reading?
by title.
No, but by title only. So we're gonna have the reading of it, but then 37 is to approve it.
Correct.
So we should have our hearing now, correct, Mr. Carlman?
You can, yeah, you're absolutely right, I'm sorry. This way, if there are any, I don't see any amendments in 136.
No, we're gonna pull 136 off. All right.
Okay.
So we'll now open up the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak, please raise your hand. Mr. Heimball.
Pete Heinball, Morningstar Court.
Good evening, Mr. Heimball. Ms. Grace, there is no clock for this public hearing. But again, anyone who's speaking, please be mindful of others that would like to speak this evening.
Okay, I do have a list of budget questions, and if I'm not mistaken, all of these questions have been submitted in advance to every member of council. So hopefully you've read through these already.
Mr. Heimball, did you copy Mr. Curtis's
Yes.
questions?
Yes.
Okay.
First, there's a large revenue item, $3 million budgeted revenue for general capital fund balance. And that's all it says. What makes up, what is this $3 million revenue item?
Mr. Curtis?
This would be funded prior year capital ordinances, and the basis for appropriating that as a revenue line item comes from local finance notice 2020-11 from the state of New Jersey. It's a local finance notice from May 4th, 2020, in which the recommendation from the state is enhancing capital fund capacity, review all completed capital project bond orders, remaining balances can be canceled by resolution, allowing the funds to lapse back to their respective balance sheet accounts. Therefore, we are following that, and we submitted the budget, and the state approved it.
So, more layman way of stating this is over borrowed. This is money in the capital fund because we over borrowed money previously for projects.
So there's money available, and again, the state encourages us to cancel that, use it if possible, and we did.
Was that done during the pandemic?
Yes.
We didn't, yeah, okay, well, we didn't borrow capital money in 2020,
But May
so this
4th,
is prior over borrowing.
that was, the memorandum was May 4th
Yes.
last year? Yeah.
So this is $3 million that had been borrowed previously, and now we're not spending it on capital projects. On top of $1 million the same kind of thing a year or two ago. And a year or two before that, there was another $1 million we handled this way. It was over borrowed money. So it was left in the capital fund and we took it to current fund, the current revenue. That's borrowed money. Are we comfortable? This has been asked before and this topic has come up before. Are we all comfortable with this over borrowing trend in the capital account that we've seen repeated? It's not just a project or two that we didn't budget the project cost, right? It's repeated. It's $3 million now, $1 million a year or two ago, $1 million a year or two before that. Over borrowing.
Pete, I don't want to dominate your time, but Tom, did we cancel a lot of capital projects last year?
Not last year.
No? Okay, good.
Year before, $1 million. And a year or two before that, $1 million. Is everyone comfortable with this over borrowing trend? This has come up before and everyone seems to be comfortable with it on council.
I don't want to spend for the sake of spending, okay? So, we did not spend this money.
We did not.
And therefore, we're going to utilize it in surplus.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're talking about not spending. I'm talking about over borrowing.
Okay.
You're comfortable with the over borrowing?
It's considered going back into the budget to offset debt service.
This one's a current fund, yeah.
That's the way the state defines it.
Yeah, I understand the state process, and I'm not questioning. This is specifically the over borrowing, repeated trend of over borrowing.
Going back in the budget to offset that.
No one wants to address this everyone's comfortable with over borrowing, so, and not answering the question. So that's,
Next question, Pete.
I'm not going to get an answer to this one.
I just answered your question. I don't want to spend money in an account just because it's in the account. Okay?
If anyone would agree with that. I'm talking about over borrowing. And no one seems uncomfortable with over borrowing. It doesn't make sense to me. Salary and wages in the 2021 budget. We produced a budget in 2020, and there was questions asked at that time about the budget amount in 2020, and there was answers given. And as turns out, when we ended the year of 2020, we over budgeted by $1 million salary and wages in 2020. Now we took the 2020 budget amount, not the lower actual amount, 2020 budget amount, and added 3 point something percent, more than that, 6% or something on top of the over budgeted 2020 budget amount. We're comfortable with the 2021 salary and wages budget?
Yep. Mr. Carr? Yeah, what we budgeted is exactly what our needs are. That's based on all the contracts and the police steps in their contract. The prior year saw that there were some programs and salaries and wages that never took place because of the pandemic. And some employees chose to go under FMLA where they did not receive their full pay. So, that was an anomaly, rather.
And that accounts for the $1 million, which your FMLA and
Whatever the difference is, yes.
so you have some kind of budget work paper that tallies all this, tallies the spending and maybe tallies your 2021 budget. Is there a work document that tallies all that?
The HR department puts together all the salary schedules, and that's where we get our numbers.
So everyone's comfortable with, there were some staffing reductions in 2020, but not to the tune of $1 million. I think you're not giving me a complete answer by stating that the $1 million overtaxed and over budget for salary and wages is due to staffing changes. I don't think you're explaining the $1 million. Explain a little portion of it. Is there a work paper document that does explain the $1 million difference?
I'm sure she keeps a schedule on all the salaries.
So everyone's comfortable with, after $1 million over budgeting in 2020, everyone's comfortable with 2021 salary and wage
Is
budget?
that the exact question you want us to answer? The way you're phrasing it? Because the
Yes.
way you're phrasing it, Pete, how can anybody answer that question?
You're comfortable that we're not over budget? Yeah, well, sure.
Okay.
You asked question?
Mr. Highball, I'm gonna give you a blanket statement on this entire budget. We are presenting a budget that has a 0 increase for the 2021 year. I am comfortable with this budget. So I'm giving you a blanket answer for any other questions you may have.
I'll move to another question. Thank you for that.
But just so you understand, you can ask me these questions, you can ask everybody these questions, but the way you're phrasing the question is difficult to answer. So I'm going to tell you, Pete, I'm comfortable with this budget. It is a responsible budget. So I'm not going to answer the phraseology of the questions you're giving me. Okay?
That you're comfortable? This
This is a very responsible budget.
so
Please continue, Mr. Highball.
so every year we budget for property tax revenue. Every year we collect much more than what's budgeted in property tax revenue. In fact, over the last 4 years, that average has been over $600,000 per year over what's been budgeted. Can we account for some of this? So we're
Okay,
going.
what happens if we collect more than we budget?
Mhm.
So let's say the reserve for uncollected taxes is too high. You're an accountant. What happens to
It's never
excess
happened.
amount? Pete, what happens to the excess amount?
This is never, what you're describing has never happened.
Pete?
I'm not gonna, you're asking me a hypothetical that
No, I'm not.
doesn't, that hasn't happened.
It's not a hypothetical, Pete.
It says sheet 29.
So if Pete, you put this together, right?
Yeah.
If the reserve for uncollected taxes is too high, and we actually collect more than that, what happens to the excess?
But every dollar,
What happens to the excess?
it goes stays in surplus.
Okay, when is it used?
I don't know, it's,
When is it used?
you decide how to use it in the
It's used
future.
now.
Well, you're still, well, that's not exactly true.
So
but-
if we estimate 99.52, okay? The 0.48, if we collect more than that 0.52, it goes into next year's budget is
Not always.
surplus, right? Yes. Yes.
You leave surplus.
Yes.
You know, every dollar you over budget in this way is overtaxing the residents in this year. I mean,
Okay, Pete.
it's what
Pete,
you,
what happens if we don't collect? Let me ask you that.
it hasn't happened.
But
That's,
let me ask you.
no, I'm
let's say
this
we
is a
collect
budget.
Let's say we collect 99.4%.
it's never happened.
Pete,
It's-
what happens if it does?
What happens if the ceiling falls down right now? You're asking me a question that's,
So are you telling me I should predict exactly what it is?
that should be the attempt, and then you can, yes. Here's how I think a budget,
I'll answer your question. You won't answer mine?
I just said yes.
Okay, so if
I
I
answered it.
if I estimate 99.4%, okay, and it's too low, what happens then to the
I
town?
think,
What happens then?
you're building a you're building a cushion into the budget.
What happens if I
It hasn't
underestimate?
happened yet. It hasn't happened since I've been following the budget for 8
Tom,
years.
what happens?
Gentlemen,
What happens?
hold on. Mr. Heimball, you're approaching 10 minutes at the microphone. Do you have any additional questions? I'm sure there are people that will also like to speak.
I'll ask two more quick ones.
Okay.
We did not include the $892,000 land parcel sale to the housing authority. We had hoped, it was stated in an earlier meeting, we had hoped to include that as revenue in this budget.
Is that something you're in favor of, Mr. Heimball?
I want an accurate budget.
Are you
I'm talking, this is a budget. How can you change the subject when I answer the
No, man, are
question?
you comfortable with the sale of that property?
I'm asking.
I'm asking you.
What do you mean, am I comfortable?
Okay,
I'm
you're
asking-
comfortable
I know
question.
that-
Are you comfortable? Why are you smiling? Are you comfortable with that?
Am I comfortable?
You're upset that we didn't include it in the budget?
I'm asking why it's not included in the budget.
It's-
This is a budget hearing.
It's
I'm asking a
delayed.
budget
All right,
question.
it's delayed. It's delayed. It's not included in it.
It shouldn't be included in it until you have an
What is the
agreement.
status?
Until it's done, you can't include it.
What's the status of that sale?
It's not in a position where we can include it in the budget. If we could, I'd want to.
We've been asking what the status of the sale. We've been
Is
asking
my
that
answer
question for a
good?
while and haven't received a clean answer on it.
Okay.
If I
You have one more question, Mr. Heimball, you said?
There's also a balance in the current fund, 2.3 million, entitled appropriation reserves. This was a reserve amount just sitting, of cash, just sitting in the current fund.
That will be used in the 2022 budget. And it's not all 2.3. There's about 1.9 in there now, and that'll be used in 2022's budget.
And why 2022? This is
That's what's
cash.
available to use.
Yeah, Mr. Cars, what happened there? Yeah, you cannot cancel that, when it's in a reserve. Cannot be canceled by law.
So it will fall into 2022.
So, but that 2.3 million represents what we over budgeted in 2020.
Okay, because 400,000 came in, and it was used to reduce that.
But we also had $500,000 in remaining surplus balance. That can be used.
So, Pete, you want to drive down the surplus to zero? Is that what you're asking as a?
Here's what you should strive to do, in
No, I'm
my
asking,
opinion.
you want surplus
No.
to be zero?
No,
Okay, thank you.
but you have
I just wanted to make sure of
2.3
that.
million and $500,000. It shouldn't be that much. And plus all these other cushions where you know you're going to collect more tax. You admitted to that, but you don't think you. And there's miscellaneous revenue you know you're going to collect for cell towers and for maintenance liens and things like that you're not budgeting. So you have all this cushioning built into it. And cushioning is the same as overtaxing. It's just that it boils down to the same thing. We have millions of these cushions for comfort. You don't want to drive something to zero. You want to leave enough for hypothetical things that don't happen.
What, like a bond rating? That's not a hypothetical thing, and I'll tell you right now, you can check into that. They do not want to see a zero fund balance. They want to see a fund.
You don't have to. I'm talking about millions of dollars,
I'm
though.
just curious, just one question. The email that Sam Sweet sent out with the citizens budget, you're copied on that, so you worked on that budget, correct?
Sure.
Okay. Then explain to me why you anticipated the $3 million in capital canceled
In your budget.
in your budget.
I was taking your number.
Oh, I get it now.
Well, because you
I had a lot
overborrowed.
of
Because you
questions
told
about
us.
it, but it was okay for you to use.
No, because you're in that number. You told us you
Right.
overborrowed $3 million.
I
And
got
that's why it's there. Because you overborrowed $3 million.
Good for
You
you.
need to take it to revenue.
I got it.
I'm asking the question: why does Tom Curtis like to overborrow millions and millions
And you affirmed it.
repeatedly?
And you affirmed it. So,
I guess that you overborrowed.
no, you affirmed that it should be used in the budget. It's in your
I'm
budget.
not arguing that. I'm arguing why we have this pattern of overborrowing.
If you were so concerned about it, why didn't you take it out when you submitted your budget?
You're going in circles. This.
Oh, I am.
Mr.
Here,
Heinbaugh,
I'll
15 minutes, thank you. Before we go on any further, show of hands of those who would like to speak during this public hearing. I want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to speak and that the time is not spent 15, 20 minutes going back and forth with members of council. Mr. Polidoro, Mr. Krug, anyone else that's speaking on this? Okay, Mr. Polidoro.
Good evening, Council. Ray Polidoro from Historic Village of Ariel again.
Good evening.
This got a little ridiculous. It did. And from this side of the microphone, it got ridiculous. I watch Jeopardy 7 o'clock most nights, and they answer in question form. That's what you guys are doing, answering in question form. You're the government. You don't submit a budget. The administration, the mayor and administrator submit the budget. You guys just give the nod. That's basically what happens. My question is, what was the surplus in 2020?
$3.8,
What's the surplus in 2021?
$3.7.
Is that in addition to the surplus in 2020, or is that an accumulative total?
We use up pretty much all the surplus every year.
Okay.
So
And what's the answer from the administration on that?
I can tell you what it is, but even on this, we studied the budget. There was am I correct in saying there was 237 last year?
Yeah, it was,
And
we
that
had
was-
available 3,837,000. We used 3.6 million, and we had a balance of 237,000.
So you're,
This year's budget had a available balance of 3,718,000. We used 3,180,000, and we have a balance of 538,000.
so basically, and I'm hearing the argument back and forth from one of the residents to the administrator and council. which is, would you rather have a zero surplus or have some surplus? Well, I guess the question simply is, why have such a heavy surplus? Okay, and it tends to be that it's, and this just painfully clear that every other year, even number years, you have a tax increase, substantial tax increase. And on the odd number years, and we all know what happens in this township on odd number years without saying it, there's a zero. Now, it's either a strategy during an election year, or you guys are just that terrible at your job every other year. But even number years, 2014, bang, 16, bang, 18, bang, and 20 again. We're down on the mat. We're down on the mat. We get up on odd number years just to catch our breath, bang. I can't wait till 2022, because if we follow the pattern and the habit that you guys have formed, 2022 would be really a gem.
Right, and I want to respect your time, I really do. I just want you to know. When Michelle and I and Carolyn were going through the budget this year, okay, one of the things that we took into account is we don't want to see a tax increase next year. And we really kept that in the back of our head. Could you try and get below zero? I'm sure you could be really aggressive and do it, but then you're going to see a spike next year, okay? And I don't want to see that.
Well, truth be told, and I love your stories of the compassion that you have, but your actions speak a whole lot louder than your words. You keep voting yes, and you keep increasing taxes. And you do it every even numbered year. And every odd number year, you manage to find a way to do zero. And in speaking, and I hate to keep on going down this road, but when you're talking about an almost 10% increase in 2014, and then 2016, and then 2018, and then 2020, and I wish I was taller, here's your zero. That's your zero increase. And you're proud of that? That's zero all the way up here. It's not zero. Where you can drop 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. That's zero. Your zero's up here. If I was taller, I'd reach where zero really is.
Right, this is zero.
No, it's not, Dan.
And
No,
next
it's not.
year, I'm confident that we're going to be able to bring back.
Mr. Hutchison, every time you raise taxes and the following year you have a zero, this is your new zero. When a team marches down a football field and you gain 5 yards, you don't keep going back to the goal line.
Right, I'm confident that we're going to have not only zero this year, I'm confident we're going to have zero next year.
You know
Okay?
what?
So when we do have zero next year, what are you going to say?
You can be confident all you want. Your words and your actions
What are
are
you gonna say?
180 degrees out of phase with one
What
another.
are you going to say? If I bring back zero next year, what are you going to say?
Then, what's that?
You're going to say congratulations.
No, I'm not. It's going to be all the way up here.
Okay.
That's your zero. Stop imagining that zero.
So basically, there's nothing I can ever do for you to say congratulations.
Oh, yeah, you could reduce taxes. You could reduce spending and reduce taxes. And the first thing you're going to go to is our police department, our first responders. There's places you can save.
Okay, if I reduce
And a
taxes
surplus.
this year, you're going to say it's an election
By the
year
way,
payment.
Dan, and I apologize because the rest of council is a part of this.
You're right.
Now, for all the years that this has been going on, there's some people here that were not here during those tax increases. They just jumped on the bandwagon. They voted yes also, and it gets increased. Now, if I'm not mistaken, please correct me if I'm wrong. This question would better be suited, addressed to Mr. Cardis, the administration. Did I hear that we borrow or we use borrowed money to offset debt service? We use borrowed money to offset debt service? Now, isn't debt service one of the exclusions that allows you to ignore the 2% cap? Isn't that just one of them?
The levy cap, yes.
Levy cap.
I'm sorry, say that again?
On the levy cap, it's outside the cap.
But either way, it's still, that debt service is always going to allow things to move higher than they normally would. So it basically allows us to ignore caps in general that are put in place so that people don't get hit so hard as often as we have. And you've often made comparisons to Cherry Hill. Have any of you seen Cherry Hill's budgets for the last handful of years? No. And are they anywhere near us?
My observation.
Yes.
How much surplus do they have in their budget this year?
No. That's not the question I'm asking.
My observation, they're highly over budget. They finish each year with almost $5.5 million. and they estimate their collection ratio at a low rate, so they generate another $2 to $3 million. They're sitting on about $30 million of surplus right now, and they only need to put 13 million into their budget. So yes, I have looked at Cherry Hill.
Okay, but miraculously, they do the same thing that we do. We don't do it as much because you over budget and you over borrow, but we keep raising taxes. Cherry Hill doesn't. That's,
They got $30 million surplus.
but they're not, you had a surplus in years you raised taxes.
Right, do you know what $30 million surplus is?
I certainly do. You guys talk about millions like it's not. Like it's not. 5 million, you have 5.2 one year. 3 million. There's always, but that surplus plays no concern when it comes to a tax increase. We have a surplus the same year you guys ran us with almost 10%. At some point, I know that a certain government refuses to give the people their money back. You couldn't fathom reducing taxes. It doesn't even cross your mind. I'd rather have surplus, just in case something happens.
I'll take the abuse. You want to bring it on? God bless.
I'm not-
Let me ask you. No,
Dan, the problem is that you're the dog behind the fence and you're barking at me. There's other people up here.
Right, there's $538,000 in surplus in a $70 million budget here. How much surplus is enough?
Listen, it's not about as much as surplus as is why you feel the need to raise taxes all the time when you're sitting on money. Yeah, but it doesn't even cross any of your minds to ever lower taxes. You'd rather keep our money because you know better what to do with it than to give it back to the people that have worked their whole lives to try and keep their home. Every time you raise taxes, their mortgage goes up because their escrow comes short.
I'm not going to do an election year gimmick to reduce taxes below zero, only to see them spike next year. I'm not going to do it.
Dan, I'm really sorry, and I know that we have conversation outside this place, but I'm about ready to call you captain because all you've been saying is I. And I'm talking to the whole council. I'm talking to the accountant, and the attorney can hear me as well. It's just a matter of tax increase, and every other year we don't raise taxes. And it all comes down to the same thing. I want to let some other people speak. And again, it comes to either a strategy of even number years when you guys don't have a real concern for that, and the odd number years when you can do what you want. And it only means one or two things, and that's the bottom line. You either strategically budget to do zero on odd number years, and then on the even number years, you're just that bad at your job, always.
Oh, right. We're hoping to have a zero next year. I believe we're going to have a zero next year. So I hope I get to prove you wrong. Okay.
Dan, in a perfect world, I hope that you're not sitting in the seat that you're in so that we don't even have to talk about that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Barbaro. Mr. Crew?
Evening again, Council. Paul Krug. So I was listening to a little bit of the back and forth with Ray and Pete, and I have to agree with Ray here. Actions speak louder than words with regard to the even and odd years, and just over time, the municipal budget increases. As you know, I started the discussion with regard to cost efficiencies and cost savings well before this meeting in an effort and a hope that we would be able to reduce the budget this year and potentially even have a negative number with regard to taxes. And so the proof was the data visualization, which I provided you, which was over the 20-year period between 1998 and 2018, municipal taxes levied against the citizens increased by 350%. That's from about 20 million to, as Councilman Hutchison quoted, approximately 70 million this year. That's significant. So, Dan, I hope that you can turn the tide, that we can have a zero next year, maybe even better than a zero. Because the parabolic movement upward, I think, is unsustainable. Dan, you also asked a question of Pete, which was, what happens if you don't collect property taxes? Well, then there's a lien sale. of the property, which last year you voted on the expedited lien sale during a pandemic, as opposed to just having the regular process. So you'll get the money. Not that the money wasn't there. The pandemic, we really didn't see any significant hit to revenue last year because of the pandemic. So the money was there, but if it was not, you take a person's house and sell it. That's what happens there. What I didn't understand, and excuse me, I did try to listen in on this and pay attention. So there was $3 million borrowed for the capital development, which then transfers over as a surplus for FY21 for debt service. If we didn't use the $3 million and we canceled it, I don't understand why we didn't just pay back that $3 million in borrowed money.
Mr. Carter, as the state of New Jersey considers it offsetting the debt service when it's appropriated in any particular year. It goes against the debt service that we currently have, which is, I think, around $6 million. Right?
So could the $3 million just be paid back from what we borrowed to cancel out that debt?
I would tell you, no, it can't. Not once it's permanently financed.
Why is that?
Because the bonds have already been sold, the deal's done. You don't go back, you can't go back to the financing company and say, here, we're gonna get some money back. Could you adjust the bonds? Could you adjust all the things that were done? It's permanent. Once it's permanent, that's what we call it, permanent financing. Permanent, it's done. The only way to apply it is to apply it to a budget to offset the amount of debt service that we pay. You can't keep it in a reserve. It's gonna lapse. You can't do it.
Okay.
The way to do it.
And that's state mandated or bond market mandated, but through the bond system?
Local bond law in the state of New Jersey, NJSA 48.
Says that you couldn't take that $3 million and
I don't know how it
Pay it back.
specifically says it, but the mechanics of it are, you cannot do
Well,
that.
in theory, we're really doing what you're asking. We have a $6 million debt service payment, and the $3 million is to pay part of that $6 million. So we are doing, in theory, in the municipal budget, what you are suggesting.
okay, so this year, the $3 million will be used as monthly payments.
Well, it's
Or
not a monthly
the-
payment, it's a one-time payment.
So that $3 million will be a lump sum payment to service
To
our
offset,
debt.
yes. So you have a $6 million expenditure in the budget, and the $3 million is to offset that $6 million.
Okay, so by the end of this year, we'll have $3 million to be serviced.
Well, we're using the $3 million to offset that payment. You have to bring it in as a revenue to be able to offset that payment.
Okay. All right, understood. What's the interest rate on that? Do you know?
I don't have that.
There's multiple bonds. They're probably average at 3%, I would say.
Understood. Thank you for the explanation.
You're welcome.
Finally, just wanted to, President Mercado, if I can address Councilman Hutchison, Councilwoman Winters, and Grace. There was a cost savings review. I remember we specified review during the last meeting. And this isn't a got you. This is just to understand. I heard that you had a number of meetings. They were productive and educational. I'm just simply interested in, what happened. Were you able to find cost savings? Were there particular line items that stood out or areas you will be looking at more closely? As you spoke, you're going to continue to work over the next year to keep a zero. Just be interested in hearing about that.
Paul, I think it was a great experience. And I hate speaking for Michelle and Carolyn, but it was very worthwhile. We looked at the entire budget. I think we met with Tom and Christy. Christy's over there to the left. And I think I met with them 4 times. I think Carolyn met with them 3 or 4 times, and Michelle met with them, Twice.
all of our questions were answered. Questions that we came up with after each meeting, we could go back and we could ask them. Ultimately, could I have, I came away with saying, could I have shaved something? Probably could have. But to me, the risk associated with doing those things would have been felt this, we would have felt, wow, we got a reduction this year. It wouldn't have been substantial, but we would have got possibly a reduction. But there would have been risk. Let's say we had a snowstorm in December. I mean, what did we use so far this year on snow this year?
About close to 400,000,
Yeah, I
a
mean,
little
and-
less.
and what did we budget in this budget for snow?
400.
So, yeah, could I do something? Yeah, but it'd be kind of scary later on in the year. And I mean, as it is, I hate the snow because it kills our budget. If we have it, I just didn't think it was prudent to do. This truly is a responsible budget. I didn't interrupt you when you were bringing some things up about the tax sale, but it's not exactly what we think. Christie, if we collect below 99.52%, what happens?
It would be a decrease to our surplus, so we would actually lose money.
I mean, some of the things that were requested for us to review, Paul, for instance, had we taken the 2.3 and put that into the budget as a revenue item, well, first of all, we can't do it, okay? But let's assume we did. There was $400,000 in expenses or invoices that came in after the end of the year that were allocated to last year. So it really wasn't 2.3, it was 1.9. And that 1.9 can't be used this year. It has to be used next year, okay? And it will, and that's what happened. Well, the prior year, we landed about 178,000.
179.
And that was not this particular year that just passed, it's prior year. So the 2.3, which ultimately became 1.9, is not something that happens, okay? It was a weird year last year. There's just a lot of things in there. I think it was an excellent opportunity for the three of us to get together and really pick Tom and Christie's brain.
And bear in mind, you have a line item, it's on sheet 29, for the reserve for uncollected taxes, and that's $872,909.
And tell me again, because now I'm talking, and it's a little bit mushy. What happens to that money? It goes into next year's fund balance, right?
No, it's actually appropriated.
So if I could, Mr. Heimbach had said earlier about there was $679,000 that we got in excess revenue. We actually budget $872,000 of money that we anticipate. So that $680 that we got is really paying back the $872. So if we budgeted $872, but we also got $680, the $680 is repaying. So in reality, we're still short $200,000 of uncollected taxes. Those uncollected taxes are things that are not sold at a tax sale, like a municipal lien. Municipal liens are stuff that we're stuck with, that they don't get, the taxes aren't paid, a lien holder doesn't pay it. That is why we will never be at 100%, because there are things at the tax sale that doesn't get sold, and the township's stuck with that, and the taxes are not collected.
And the schools and the county and the fire districts all get 100% of the levy. As if we're going to collect it
First, before Gloucester Township.
They get it all.
Okay.
It's up to us to collect. If we don't, we fall short, we pay.
And there's some revenue items that Pete brought up. And those revenue items are in surplus this year, okay, from a prior year. So there's consistency year to year. So although you may want to include a revenue item, a miscellaneous revenue item, in this budget this year,
It's really there but it's in the form of surplus from a prior year. And it's just rippled, there's consistency, period to period. So could I grab something theoretically and allocate it for this year? I could, but then next year, we're gonna have a problem because we don't have the revenue item in next year's budget. So it's not like we're not manipulating numbers to suit an election year. I won't have that, okay? That revenue item that was referenced is going to be in next year's budget through surplus, okay? So maybe you don't like it, maybe you want every single dime allocated to this year, but that's going to produce these types of results. And I'm trying to get away from that. And yes, I am trying, because that's all I can speak for myself.
Gentlemen, Mr. Cruz, do you have anything else?
Being cognizant of time, no. I will say, thank you for the efforts. They're appreciated, looking at the budget and digging in, looking for that cost savings. I think this dialogue that we just had is extremely productive. I know there is a little bit of friction between that side and this side. I think dialogue like this helps to break that down. And I do listen, and a lot of times an explanation, a clear explanation, helps me understand more complicated scenarios like this. So if we can, have dialogue, even if on this side we do have gotcha questions sometimes, an explanation goes a lot further in helping all of us understand what you're seeing and how things work from that side. So appreciate it. Thank you.
I wholeheartedly agree, Mr. Cruz. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this? We'll close the public hearing. We have a first and second on that motion. We had a resolution. We had a first and second on it.
I don't know, did they?
Yes, that opened up my hearing. So we have first and second on 135. Now is it read by title only? So I need a roll call.
Mr. Hutchinson?
Yes.
Ms. Grace? Yes. Mr. Leon?
Yes.
Ms. Winters? Yes. Ms. Strato? Yes. Mr. Mercado?
Yes. Resolution R25.05-136. I'm asking to remove that because we don't have to amend the budget at all. So can I have a motion to remove or amend, remove Resolution 136?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchinson. Second. Thank you, Mr. Mignone. On the question, roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchinson?
Yes.
Ms. Grace? Yes. Mr. Leon?
Yes.
Mrs. Winters? Yes. Mrs. Strato? Yes. Mr. Mercado?
Yes. Next is Resolution 2105-137, resolution of the Township Council of the Township of Gloucester, County of Camden, State of New Jersey, adopting the 2021 calendar year budget. May I have a motion, please?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchinson. Thank you, Mrs. Grace. On the question, roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchinson?
Yes.
Ms. Grace? Yes. Mr. Leon?
Yes.
Mrs. Winters? Yes. Mrs. Strato? Yes. Mr. Mercado?
Yes, and thank you to your work on this, Mr. Carter, and Mrs. Eric, our CFO. And thank you to the members of council for reviewing the budget and those that sat down with Mr. Carter, Ms. Eric, Carolyn, Mr. Hutchinson, and Mrs. Winters. Thank you very much. We have a GTE Gov Access email. From Denise Coyne of 1060 Choosing Road, Laurel Springs, New Jersey. There are several questions here. Mr. Carlemere is going to assist me on these answers here. I'll read the first one and then I'll pass it off to you, Mr. Carlemere. Is that fine? Resolution R2101-033, Ordinance 0-21-01, and the redevelopment agreement for Lakeland Phase 1 state the plan for Block 12301. Lot 4 includes affordable family housing. Mr. Box stated that the township is to build family affordable housing on Lot 4 at the redevelopment meeting. Clearly, The current documented plan is to build affordable housing in addition to senior and veteran housing. Does the township's plan for affordable housing violate the deed restriction imposed by the county? Mr. Carter.
No, it does not. It still meets the requirements for affordable housing, which is in our plan. Specifically in the plan, which has not yet been approved by the court, talks about senior and senior, veteran, and senior housing. Affordable housing, not market housing, affordable housing. That's the plan that's going to be before the courts when they finally open up.
Okay. Number 2, the Gloucester Township Housing Authority purchased the 15-acre block 12301, lot 4 from the county for $600,000. Who was the beneficiary of the $1 2008 sale Mr. Carlemere and Mr. Cardis referred to on April 26, 2021? Was it Gloucester Senior Campus LP?
So after the last meeting, I did secure, and also Mr. Cardis, copies of the documents that related to the purchase from the county. The information that we were provided during a lot of the public portions is that it was purchased for $1, but we were mistaken with the information that was given to us. The actual purchase, I have a copy of the deed, the actual deed was for 15 acres, which includes lot 3 and lot 4 at the time, for $600,000. That's what was paid, it was not $1. What's being transferred or talked about now throughout this process just deals with 10 acres, not a full 15 acres. The 5 acres has already been developed as the Senior Campus 1.
Who currently owns the Senior Campus 1 building?
I can't answer that. That probably should be addressed to the Housing Authority, because I know they have the Finance Corp, the Finance LP. That was developed with their then attorney and the executive director as part of all their financing. I would assume it's still in the Housing Authority. I'm not sure how the LP plays with title ownership. It could be fee ownership with the LLP. I'm not sure about that.
Okay. Mr. Carlemere stated that it is possible for the township to deed the land back to the Housing Authority for $1. Please justify the use of hundreds of thousands of dollars of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to transfer the land between 2 municipal entities in 2012, as well as the current agreement for 2021.
I don't know if I can answer that. You could always transfer a property for $1, depending on the agreements and finances and restrictions that come into play as part of the reasons and philosophy of making the transfer. I just know that this seems like a good transaction to take place now with the transfer of the property as to the objectives that we thought about in 2012 and that we're thinking about in 2021. I don't know how to answer that question when it's raised.
Okay, and our last question. Councilman Hutchinson stated on April 26, the deal between the township and the Gloucester Township Housing Authority isn't happening now. If that was an accurate statement, why is it no longer happening?
Well, I don't want to speak for Councilman Hutchinson, but what I understood is it's not happening now, the agreement's on something.
Exactly.
And that's just why it's not happening now. And I don't know what the status of those agreements are between the firm representing the Housing Authority and the firm representing the township in that transaction. I just know agreements have not been signed or circulated.
Thank you, Mr. Carlemere. We'll now open up the second public portion. This is for any item that the public wishes to address council. Each speaker is limited to 5 minutes, and there's a total time limit of 30 minutes for the second public portion. Anyone wish to speak, please raise your hand. Mr. Krug.
I was just hoping to get an update on the Blackwood West redevelopment plan with regard to T&M Associates.
At the first meeting in April, Mr. Lechner and I spoke, and I had asked him to extend an invitation to the planner for that. Mr. Lechner, do you have an update on that? No, you can speak loud. You're fine.
I just received, maybe an hour or two before the meeting, the amended redevelopment plan from the planner. So we received the plan, I went through it, I had several editorial comments on the plan. And the Economic Development Corporation looked at the plan. And Stan Slahecka from T&M Associates just emailed me. He was hoping to get it to me a couple weeks ago, but for whatever reason delayed. So, but I did get it today. I have not looked at it.
Okay.
So,
At this point, it's up to Council President on when maybe we could schedule it. I don't know.
let's shoot for the workshop meeting in June 14th. That workshop meeting will be at 6:30.
I can
Let's
do that.
invite him to that.
Okay.
So, Mr. Krug, the June 14th workshop meeting, that's the meeting that precedes our regular meeting at 7:30. So 6:30 will be the workshop on the 14th of June.
14th of June. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Close the public portion. Following the directors.
Mr. Barberman,
Nothing to report.
Mr. Curtis,
Nothing to report.
Mr. Lechner,
Nothing to add, thank you.
Chief Harkins,
Just this week, to just remind council, remember the public, this week is National Police Week, where we're celebrating National Police Week, culminates on the 15th with National Peace Officers Memorial Day. I just ask everybody just to remember there's been 119 officers that have been killed in the line of duty this year, 2021. Last year, 362 officers were killed in the line of duty. And, again, we normally have officers doing bike ride down to Washington, but the pandemic's also put kibosh on that. But we're going to be broadcasting a virtual candlelight vigil that's done every year at the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial in Washington. And we're going to be celebrating in other ways. I invite the public to go to our social media Facebook page. I put a message out, as I have been doing, Chief Earl did before, about Police Week and basically how proud we are and how proud the officers are to serve the community and how much we're honored to serve the community. So I invite everybody to take a look at that. Also, just want to, it's a proud moment for Gloucester Township. We became aware of a young man named Colin Lawler, who's on, I think it's called Colin Strong Facebook page. I would recommend. So this young man, little backstory, back in August of 2020, they lived in Wyoke. Young man was 15 years old, and he's battled brain cancer. He had surgery, had a tumor removed. He's been in remission. His bike got stolen. And without my knowledge, without any fanfare, the platoon of officers that was working that night, took a collection, purchased a replacement bicycle for the young man. So we got a good connection with the family from that. So much so that last week, I think it was on Monday, or I forget which day of the week, it may have been Wednesday, the grandmother came in just to thank us and give us an update, letting us know that he was going in for surgery Thursday morning at Children's Hospital because a tumor had come back in his brain. And and I give Officer McLaughlin, she's in the back here, we quick scrambled and we did a drive-by for him. And that was because we felt such a connection. I think we had 40 cars. I mean, guys came from home, jumped in police cars, and just to give them a little morale boost. They had to unfortunately sell their house in Wyoke because the mother, was a 2-income family, and with his illness, and I'm told that she had to stop working to take care of him. So they're living in Cherrywood Apartments now, and I think that they're getting a house. I think it's in Winslow Township. They have to downsize, but this community's rallying around them with money, and there's a GoFundMe page, and Tom's been very generous, provided the Carter's Foundation the information. And so I would just ask everybody, the updates that we've gotten is, so far as his surgery was successful. He has a hard time holding his head up because they had to basically dissect the muscle that holds his head up, but he's making good progress.
Jen's in constant contact with the family. We got a nice letter, and we're keeping close to them. So it's a classic Gloucester Township story, how this community's rallied around them. The fire department joined us for that last minute drive-by. And I would just ask everybody to just keep the family and that young man in your prayers. And he's a fighter for sure. And the mother has told us how much she feels the strength of the community, everybody come together. So I would just ask, we'll continue to monitor it and keep it in your prayers. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Chadwell?
For the sake of transparency, just for the record, for your question earlier about the pedestrian bridge and then change order, the original bid did have the tree that fell on the bridge to remove those, along with some ancillary trees to allow for decommissioning of the current bridge that's damaged and construction. When we were out there at our pre-construction meeting, we identified a handful of trees that could potentially fall on the new bridge. So we didn't want to be in the same position a year from now or next year.
Thank you.
Mr. Hutchinson?
Chief, that was beautiful. Pete, Sam is not here, but I'm going to attribute this to Sam as well. Thank you very much for taking the time to put together your thoughts on that paper. Although I don't agree with your thoughts, they allowed Carolyn, Michelle, and myself to really dig down deeper. And in order to get the answers that we came away with, we got a really good, thorough understanding. So, although I didn't like the way you phrased your questions, I just want you to know I truly do appreciate the effort you put into doing that, and that's sincere. Ray, as always, nice hearing from you. Thanks.
Ms. Graves?
I want to thank all the officers in the room for their service. Thank you again for everything that you do. Councilman Hutchinson, Councilwoman Michelle, I want to thank you very much for helping me get through the budget. It, of course, was my first time. I had a lot of questions, and the VA has been very forthcoming in answering those questions. I definitely know that we have a responsible budget, and I'm glad to see that my first year here, we are not raising any taxes. So again, as this is an election year, I'm hoping too that I'm going to remain back here on council and put my time in and help continue to make sure that we have fiscal responsible budget. I appreciate everyone's hard work. President Tata, thank you for your leadership, and everyone on the council, I really appreciate all the support. And I really, really appreciate the police department so wholeheartedly, and I wish you a happy National Police Week. Thank you again for your service.
Mr. Monroe?
Happy National Police Week, Chief, and to the rest of the officers of our good community. Also, happy belated Nurses Day to our nurses. The Lawler family, I got a chance to meet them, I guess it was about 9 years ago. They really are involved in the community. At that time, my communications with the parents of Colin and his sister, who was one heck of a softball player and a heck of a soccer player. And it's a shame that a young child has to go through this. Yesterday, my son with social media, he said, "Oh, there's a picture of Colin Lawler." He showed off his scar in the posterior back of his head. It's just unfair. Thank you all for coming, and be safe going home.
I too want to thank the police for everything they do, and our township is top notch. It is Police Week. It's also Teachers Week and Nurses Week. They tend to blend together. There's three professions, they're all in the same kind of fields, but they're all together. So congratulations and thank you to people who fall into all three of those categories. Gloucester Township Hockey Alliance had their national tournament last week. It finished, not this past Sunday, the one before that. So for the younger kids, there are 9 different championship levels. Of that, there were 90 teams, but some of them were for the older kids. But of those 9 levels, Gloucester Township won 4 of those championships. Being with that, the Cadet A team, which is one who did win. The winner of that championship is the one who hosts nationals next year. So nationals will be held in Gloucester Township again next year, which is good because it brings people. I mean, this year, of course, it was limited, but we do get teams from New York, out in Pennsylvania, a lot of the shore towns, Massachusetts. There's a lot. Pittsburgh, there's a bunch. Occasionally, a Canadian team may come down because Gloucester Township and some of the other local towns have gone up to their tournaments. So every once in a while they'll come down, but it does bring a lot to the community. It's a amazing complex, and it's nice for other towns to see that because I've traveled all over and seen most of those areas in all different towns. And I have to say, back in the day when my kids were younger, I was always embarrassed because of what we had. But now Gloucester Township is out there with pride and eager to show off our facility because it is an amazing concept. Also, regarding the budget, we did have those meetings. I'm not a person who feels comfortable speaking about all that because I am not from a financial background. I am a nurse, but I do not hesitate to ask questions. I felt comfortable with all the answers that I received. I learned a lot, as I do every budget season, even in work when it's budget season, I learn a lot with it. But I do feel that it is a responsible budget, and I do feel comfortable with my decision. Thank you.
Mrs. Freda?
I hope everyone has had the opportunity to see the spotlight that Gloucester Township received over the weekend from weekend filler regarding Mystic Ginger and Shannon's Wild Fig. Albeit, I know sometimes the progress is slow for Blackwood, but hopefully this small spotlight we did receive over the weekend with the news will bring in some more business from our local community and those around us. Thank you.
Mr. Morado?
I want to thank everyone for coming out this evening. Each year in April, normally the first council meeting, the Gloucester Township Scholarship Committee, which is a 501c nonprofit, provides $45,000 in scholarships to high school seniors. That money is derived from the Gloucester Township Day that takes place on the first Saturday of June. It comes from the 5K race. It comes from they have a wine tasting, and recently they had a food truck event in downtown Blackwood. As you can imagine, with those events not happening over the last year, it's impacted what they can provide to our high school seniors. However, this year, they announced 2 weeks ago, they did award scholarships. They were smaller amounts of $500, but to 20 deserving students that are high school seniors that will be attending college in the fall. As part of our reopening of our township, an event that we're having, that's an annual event that I chair, and I always invite everyone to come out to that, is our scholarship 5K run. That's part of the Gloucester Township Scholarship Committee. So we're having that June 12th live, not virtual. I don't like anything virtual. It is live, and we'll have folks running or walking down our streets here on Choose Lane Road, or if you're a walker, you can walk around Veterans Park. But I encourage you, if you're able to come out, walk or run, whatever it may be, but that also helps the scholarship committee provide scholarships to our deserving students that are attending high school. Again, that is a committee made of volunteers, and all the money that's derived from Gloucester Township Day, the 5K race, the food and truck, the truck festival, wine tasting that they have, all goes towards scholarships. So thank you. With that, I entertain a motion to adjourn. All those in favor? All right, have a great evening, everyone.
Yeah, I gotta fix them up, I think.
Yeah.
It's my truck broke down, so it's getting fixed. All my kids are in college, so it's kind of like,
Oh, everybody's.
oh yes, we don't have a car.